Thank you very much for the opportunity to look at this reception area. I'm excited to work with you to create an ideal solution. You've chosen some great elements and tools, so I'd like to work towards a seamless solution where the parts you're considering make up a much greater whole. To get you started, I've come up with a comprehensive design to demonstrate how you can link the parts together to get more out of the project than just a nice makeover to a couple of rooms. I've aimed to go beyond basic furniture and surface combining and create a real experience for potential visitors. One which gives the college an opportunity to promote itself and its image as a community and make sure that entering this building is memorable for every visitor, be it a prospective parent, teacher, or student. Now, obviously, my design may fit with your approach and the identity of the college or not. But at the least it demonstrates the scope of what we can do for you. It gives you a good starting point. I've created the design using metaphors and themes, so keep in mind while you watch that you can mix, match, swap and customize these to your liking. I will recap these and the primary options at the end. Combining printed wall and floor is an excellent technique. There's so much that you can do with it. You can make all sorts of effects, make things really memorable. The one thing that I've seen though is if you make the entire floor out of printed floor, first of all, it's very expensive. And I think you could actually stretch your money better elsewhere. Obviously, I don't know what your budget is, so you may say, well, we just want the best. Very good. But what I've seen when a whole floor is printed, unless you get the absolute ideal design, it can start to look maybe a bit busy and a little bit plasticky. So what I've been thinking, and I'll show you the first suggested design, is to use it surgically in just one or two places, and you just let me know what you think of this. Because the thing is, for a printed floor that we do, with vinyl flooring, you're looking at 180 to 200 pounds per square meter. And you can get very, very nice engineered wooden floor or even solid wood floor for less than that. So what I was thinking is to combine, because the printed floor, if it's in vinyl, it's matte. But what we could do is actually have vinyl that's printed going up the wall and then cover that vinyl in something called epoxy resin, which is like a clear glass-like substance. It's not slippery, so people don't tend to slip. Shoes and everything work very well. And here I'll show you some examples of some epoxy that's used with some metallic pigments. It creates an excellent effect. And I think that floor with sections of the floor in printed and that very, very sharp gloss finish next to a matte wooden finish and that beautiful substance of the wood, and using matte in other places would be a really, really ideal combination. People will really feel the quality of the room. Finally, to complement the wooden floor, I would have these beautiful wood sections on the wall. I'm sure you've seen them in a lot of bistro cafes and things like that. In fact, in the same area that you're in, there are a few. So how do we take these elements that we've mentioned and create a unified design? Well, I would have the artwork stretching out from your existing reception desk, and I'm going to mention in a minute part of another section of the floor, the one that you see in the visitor's room at the top right hand side, a technique that we can use which will be really effective. So where I'm moving the mouse here, I would have the printed floor coming out from the reception desk and coming up this wall. Then what I would suggest is that we get an edgeless screen to replace the large screen that you have on the wall, because you have an area that needs repair anyway. And with an edgeless screen we can embed it in the wall so that it becomes part of the artwork. How this works is that you take the artwork and the slideshow that you have on your television in the reception at the moment, we can actually take the same artwork and stretch it across so that the television is like part of the wall, and that part of the wall fades into the design that's on the wall already and then goes into the promotional material that you would like to have on the screen in series. So it would fade in and out. So whenever you get to the end of a particular section, it would fade to become part of, let's say, the lion, which is part of your school symbol. You could have that up the wall, or the edge of the shield shape going from the floor and up the wall. So let me fill in the other areas that you see on the floor plan. That circle that you see in the visitor's room on the left-hand side there, in the top right-hand corner of that room, is an epoxy floor. That shield shape that you see represents something that you could do in the middle of the room with epoxy, and on top of the reception desk you could also do something. So this is an example of what you can do, and it looks absolutely stunning, especially if you mix different kinds of coins. Very easy to do on top of tabletops, on top of counters. This kind of epoxy is more expensive than craft epoxy. It can be used on floors. It's non-slip, extremely durable, UV resistant, and looks very, very high quality. It's like a glass finish. So you can see that there's lots of people who've done very interesting things with them. But it's not just that. What I was saying about vinyl printing, we could, and I'm going to show you some themes at the end that you could choose from, do something like with on top of vinyl or on top of a tabletop using wood. So depending on what theme you choose, I think the epoxy route would be excellent. You can also get one of your departments involved. So this line outline of a shield, that could easily be created by someone in your art department. You could always fall back on us. We can create it, make sure it's done in time, but there's quite a bit of time until the installation would happen. We can do the covering in the epoxy, but someone in your school would be able to create the shield. We can provide a large printed out in-scale shield using your symbol, put that on a backboard, deliver that to you, and you can have someone place the actual pennies in place, choose whether it's shiny. You can have 2 or 3 versions. If you're not happy with any of them, then we can do it, that's fine. And if it worked out, which I'm sure it would, then that would create quite a nice story to the installation. And you could put some promotional material telling people that it was made by the school. So let's look more closely at the visitor's room and the overall concept. If you could pause this video and click on the video that's appearing in front. This is a promotional video that I've created, an example of a promotional video that could be used on a second edgeless screen in the corner of a visitor's room. Have a look at it. It'll give you an idea of the themes that I'm thinking of and the quite clever ideas that you could use. So go there and come back to this once you're finished. Okay, you're back. Did you watch the promotional video? If you didn't, then go back and watch that promotional video, because a lot of what I'm about to explain you won't understand unless you see that. So let's look further into this idea in the corner. We go a bit closer. What we're thinking of is using acrylic, which will go very well with the epoxy resin, and making a shield out of the acrylic which matches the school shield. Making that shield into a structure so that we have something printed at the back and then it's engraved at the front, as you see here. You can add lighting. That is a negligible cost, and in terms of work it's very, very easy. It's just a strip LED light. What we're thinking is creating a donation box in the corner. So if we go back to the picture of that corner with the 3 sections, if you imagine a large shield created out of acrylic above this very gloss epoxy floor, which looks like glass, then the donation box, which you could choose how you want to use it, something that could go to a local charity, something that could go to school children, a trip that the school children do, whatever you can think of. But what it will create is this effect that it looks like the coins that are being put into that donation box are going into the floor. And what would be nice to kind of take this theme of being a proud British school is to have pennies in the centre, and then, as you see on the outside, start to add in on the edges of that round part that has the epoxy penny floor, start to add in coins from other parts of the world, especially countries that you get students from. And then next to that shield, we would use the shield, have it printed on the back, as I said, with vinyl, but then have the front engraved, and if you wanted lighting you could have that on or off. Again, the edges of the epoxy floor could also have lighting embedded, which is totally invisible unless it's on. Then on the left-hand side of that shield, again, made out of acrylic, we would make it bespoke. It's very easy to make furniture out of acrylic. Very nice glass effect. A table with holes in the top that you can put a cup inside. And then on the right-hand side, a water dispenser. And the used cups become receptacles for these little leaves that turn into plants that people can take home. Very, very easy to keep. The most easy to keep house plant you can imagine. And obviously one that cleans the air very well. And then we could also, this is getting a little bit more creative, but we could also add an effect with the water dispenser that will make it look like the epoxy is actually the water coming out of the water dispenser. But that's neither here nor there. There's lots of different choices with water dispensers. I'll show you a few now. So hot and cold water taps start off at around £500, and then they go up. You can get ones with sensors, which are simply just touch operated. They come out with boiling hot water. This one even comes out with sparkling water, so you can have hot water, boiling hot water, cold water, and sparkling water, all from the same dispenser. You can go up from that. That one costs about £3,000, the one with that dispenser, but that comes with a full unit that would be stored behind that shield as I described. Or you can go for something that's a bit more manually filled, but then obviously you need to think about that with what the receptionist does. Coffee machines, there's so much choice out there. I think we can supply that, that's fine. At a discount, we've got sister companies, but maybe that's something to talk about after you've decided a route to take. So moving to the 4 windows which lead to the outside, I would suggest putting vinyl on both sides. So something that faces outside and then an information wall that faces inside. We could take the vinyl and make that spread down to the floor. But what I'm thinking of is essentially an orientation of the area. So on the first pane, you have the largest view. Then on the second pane, you zoom in. You have lines going from the first pane to the second pane. You zoom in to indicate notable areas and also very quickly orient people with the fact that the college has 2 different buildings and the different areas that are within that, the different departments that are within that. In the third pane, I would have interesting places to go within the area besides the college itself. And finally, the 4th pane, we could have pictures of inside those areas. That would be very nice leading lines, a very quick way to have an orientation to the college itself for any visitors.
For the outside, I would wait until you've decided on the themes for the inside, because obviously the creative work, the printing and the installation can be combined. So regarding the furniture, I'm going to show you some sofas in a second, but you can see the feature table, side table on the top left hand side. That would be a table that we would take and cover in the same epoxy effect as the reception. So for furniture, depending on what theme you go for, something traditional would make sense. Obviously the colour scheme of the red and the blue, which you already have. Those are examples of high quality Chesterfield sofas that we sell with that British theme. That's the sofa in situ. The alternative is something a bit more modern, which has more acoustic properties because it has a high back. This is a very popular range of ours, which I'll show you here, but we would use high quality faux leathers, and they're very, very, very durable, much more so than fabrics. They're wipeable, obviously, guard against spills. So let's recap the themes or pathways that you can choose to take with this. First of all, the theme of coins or value. So as part of the idea of the screen being able to fade into the wall, you could also have the collection box underneath the screen and have this image of coins pouring from the screen into the donation box and then into the floor. It's meant to say coins. So coins transitioning from British to multiple currencies in the floor would be a good idea. Coin animations as demonstrated. You could have different settings for the animation. So remember the coin coming towards the screen and turning around in slow motion. That obviously looked like a dorm room. We could change the setting in which that coin was flipping so you could see imagery of different areas. Obviously that has to be made in 3D, so it's not as simple as just taking a picture of a place. Obviously the theme of value can then be injected into the promotion material and video material. And then you could go for a coin effect on or in the walls. And then what I would suggest for in the reception is to take your shield and make it three-dimensional and then make it look metallic. That would be a very easy way, and I think in a way that would look somewhat more elegant than the lion. So imagine that the curve of the shield, the side of it coming up the wall at an angle and going onto the floor as well, in the curve where the receptionist sits, and you'd be able to see it as a visitor on the right hand side. That would also mean that you could then duplicate that same effect in a more grey metal for the Mac suite that you've asked for a quotation for as well. So that's coins of value. The other option is text and floating text. Obviously I showed you that video, just very, very quick and simple of a couple of quotations. So text floating, we could take that exact same animation effect and blow that up. I've already spoken with the artist that we use, and he could then create sections for the wall so you'd have a seamless view of text floating on all the walls in the visitors room, and then the remaining walls in the reception area. And then obviously you could have a bigger piece of artwork, as I mentioned, that shield or whatever you choose behind the reception desk. Text can be added to wooden floors. That's using black ink, and it's a transfer. It's a lot cheaper than having fully printed vinyl floors. So you could still do the same effect where you have where the receptionist is and just where the main artwork behind the reception transitions down to the floor, and then the rest in wooden floor you get higher value. I'll show you the pricing in a few minutes, estimates for the pricing, and this will make things a lot more real in terms of costs. I've also shown you different options where you can swap one thing for another to show you how much you can save using that. So you can get a good idea of the value of each option. So then also another idea is moving or blurring text as well as on the floating on the walls. So you again, that idea of the screen transitioning between different promotional material, you could have certain sections of the wall blurring around the screen so that you could have this effect of text moving quite fast. Again, that sort of creates that effect. Then finally, the third would be light bulbs, ideas, or growing minds. You could do something quite interesting like have light bulb cups and coffee cups. We can source these. I've already found a place to find them with a sister company of ours. So that, along with light bulb animations and art on the walls, I would again keep it quite simple, just a few, so it's not too busy. Combine with the growing minds represented by the plants. Again, have that planter with the plants coming out if you're up for that idea. Vines on the walls. This has very good potential. If you do like the idea, it would be a lot more difficult to make look really good. We'd have to possibly charge quite a bit more for the artwork side of things because I would like to get that really perfect. A growth theme throughout in the artwork and the floor. The floor can be changed to this, obviously, the printed floor. We would have to discuss how much wooden floor or vinyl wood effect floor you would like. You could also have a larger area of color enhanced map work, so you could take map work of the local area. We would color enhance it to make it look a lot more green and vibrant, and possibly make the buildings look a little bit more metallic. Okay, so have a think about that. We'll move on to the pricing. So for the estimate, what I've done for the estimate is what I've wanted to make sure of is to make sure that you don't have any shocks. So I've priced up for the very maximum using the most expensive sofa options, the most involved artwork, the most expensive features such as the instant hot water and cold taps, having that plumbed in. So let's start from the top. The flooring, wood floor and paneling on doors, custom cut, as well as barrier matting outside and in. I know you said you wanted to reuse the carpeting that's at the front, but one thing that most people don't realize is that barrier matting is affecting your whole building. The amount of barrier matting that you have, which can remove dirt from shoes, determines how much dirt actually gets in the building. And I've priced up for barrier matting outside, which would complement the wood paneling, and then a different kind inside, which looks like carpet, but is still barrier matting in that square that's already existing in front of the entrance door. Then demolition making good, the structural survey, demolition, enhancing, opening up the doorway as you asked. Then for the printed wall and floor, we would need to take away all the skirting, and that would involve a fair bit of plastering. We would repair the walls so that they were all flat and ready for the vinyl to be applied. I've included here for the Chesterfield sofa with the Great Britain flag on the back. That's in antique leather. That's the most expensive option. Feature coffee table, we would do that in the same effect as the top of the reception desks. By the way, I've included pricing to enhance both of your reception desks, so in the other building as well, the one which contains the IT room, you might as well do that. It's not a huge part of this cost. Bespoke acrylic table for the idea of the plant cups, if you wanted that. Engraved acrylic school shield donation box, so I showed you those pictures of the shields. You can have that. That would be quite large, at least 600 millimeters tall. Then instant hot water and cold water dispenser in the visitors room. And then the vinyl printing for all the outside, the vinyl wall and floor printing, epoxy application, leveling, beveling, installation, and climate control during the epoxy going off. We would need to block off the doors and that, because the cure of the epoxy is determined by the climate that it's in. Epoxy counter treatment. The epoxy is a fairly large part of the cost. The epoxy counter treatment is quite straightforward, a lot more straightforward than the floor, because it doesn't have to be so seamless. We have to be a lot more careful with the floor to make the whole thing absolutely perfect. So then I've also included everything that I've showed you in the idea. The plants that are in there, the pothos in the head planter, the planters are matched. The second pothos which is the money plant, by the way, in that video, for the reception desk. That's the light bulb, coffee and water cup set that I mentioned. LED lighting around the wooden floor edge. So again, if you had the shield, you'd have the option, and we put it underneath the floor and up, so there's a button on reception. So you could switch lights on that highlight the shield and the penny floor in the other area. Then recommended electrics I've included for the most expensive, which is a true edgeless screen. These are used in a lot of presentations, things like that, very, very high quality. It's true edgeless in the sense that there isn't even a very thin, very, very thin piece of metal. And these are professionally installed on a mounting bracket, and they will be able to calibrate it, so it really, really, really does look as if it's part of the wall. And then to give you an idea of how you can change the quote, if the total is too high, or you really want the fully printed floor in epoxy and you've got a good idea for that, to change the wood effect vinyl floor to change the wood floor to wood effect vinyl floor would save you £2,000. To replace the true edgeless screens with infinity screens, which are still very high quality, large 52-inch screens, that would save you £570. Modern seating, which was that option I showed you, the curve with the round with the high backs and the acoustic properties in super hard wearing faux leather, that would save you £850 compared to the Chesterfield. There is the other Chesterfield, which is the darker leather, which you saw with the Great Britain cushions on them. That's £300 less than the one I've included. And then full floor printed in epoxy would add an extra £3,000 to the flooring costs. Okay, I hope that makes it clear. These are estimates because obviously the project is taken as a whole and logistics become less. The more we can combine work, the simpler the work is, and the more the entire project is worth to us. Also, what kind of work is involved. The building work obviously adds a fair bit of complication for health and safety and that kind of thing. So have a look at that. I've made it the maximum. I've played around with various options, and you could get it down to 25,000 if you didn't have things like hot water taps and you went for the most basic elements. So get back to me. We can do a video call. I can play around with these inclusions and then come up with something a lot more concrete.